Alright, I'm here interviewing my grandfather, Sydney Rothkopf. This is Sydney Rothkopf, and he is going to tell you some basic things first.
Okay. My age, by the way, is 84.
Yeah.
We'll be 85 this summer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Alright. Alright, here.
World War II.
Yes.
I had two groups of friends. There was some intermingling between them.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, one group, we played the cards, and we went to parties and so on, social. The other group were ham radio guys, and that's a whole different ball game.
Don't look at me.
Mm-hmm.
And we played around with ham radios, equipment.
Mm-hmm.
We used to take apart old radios to get the parts and construct equipment.
No. What exactly did you do at when you were in World War II? What was your job?
Oh,
exactly?
In World War II, I was in I drafted and put in the Signal Corps. Now the Signal Corps then was, how could you describe it? It was the beginning of the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the Signal Corps became the Army Air Force. Today it's known as the U.S. Air Force. But at that time it was the Army Air Force. And I went through basic training, and then I went down to Tampa, Florida, where I was in an area where they trained. Anyway, what went on is
Don't look at me.
to her for okay. I became part of the 709th. What would you call it? Radar outfit. This is ground radar. In other words, there were ground 50 men in a platoon. There were a bunch of platoons that would go out in different areas and set up their equipment and report in by radio to headquarters. And in headquarters they had a big table set up with a map of the area and the little gadgets to represent our planes and their planes, enemy planes. Bogies, they were called. Our planes were called, each one had an IFF unit in it, which would interpret friend or foe and let them know that they were a friend.
Yeah.
And some men from the Air Force would be sitting overlooking this table, and they would communicate with the planes, their planes, to send them in from where the sun was shining, so that they wouldn't be seen too well, and attack the other enemy planes.
Give them the advantage.
It was quite an interesting thing.
So.
But this went on, and these plots were sent in. I call them plots, locations where they would move the people. And I was involved in managing a group of men who typed up these plots that came in. They were all examined somewhere in Washington and all different parts of the states for I don't know what for, but we had to make 18 copies
of each one,
of each series of attacks, you might call them, and 18 copies, 9 at a time, and a typewriter with carbon copies. They didn't have copy machines then.
Of course. So you had to do carbon copies of everything.
And I had these fellas, some of them were draftsmen, they would draft the map, others were typists, and they would come to get all this stuff together, and I would write up the trip, the attack, and how it went on. And this started about 1943, around 1943.
Is when you went in? Or?
I went in 1942.
Alright.
But by the time I reached overseas, it was, that's a whole other story. The ship left from Staten Island late at night,
Alright.
and we were all on this converted cruise ship.
Headed all the way towards where exactly?
We didn't know where we were going.
Alright.
We headed south, we're getting warmer. I said, no, boy, we're going to North Africa. Then we hit the Panama Canal.
Alright.
And we went through. So I knew it's going to be the Pacific. But none of us knew where we were going.
Really? They didn't tell you at all until
No,
you got
no.
there?
Even the officers didn't know.
Huh. That's so interesting that they did that.
Yeah.
I wonder why exactly.
And we finally, well, originally we reached Australia, Brisbane, Australia. At night, late at night, we were all transported to a camp way out in the suburbs of Brisbane, in a place called, I'm trying to think of the name, Wollongongara, something like that. Way out. But we used to take a trolley car all the way into town if you want to go to town. It was a very interesting experience. Anyway,
Yeah.
we were out there and spent about 1 month there. The first meal we had, I couldn't figure out whether it was white meat chicken or what. It was in a stew. And I found out later it was rabbit.
Really? It was a rabbit? That's funny. So you were there for a month?
I was there for a month. Then we got on a ship, and we went down to New Guinea.
Yeah.
We only ended at Port Moresby, and eventually we moved into Lae, L-A-E, which is about 20 miles inland from Port Moresby, where there's a big landing strip. And they used to be attacked with bombers coming over
On this landing strip?
on this landing strip.
Yeah, yeah.
So we had foxholes dug in the landing strip near the planes.
That you'd have to jump into?
We jump into the hole and wait until the bombing is over and come out. Well, you see, we were a so-called non-combat group, and we were non-combat except when you're in a combat area.
So it was
Then you're
sometimes combat. So how long did you stay in New Guinea for?
I spent about a year in New Guinea and about 3/4 of a year in Philippines.
The Philippines. And so this was after New Guinea, you went to the Philippines.
Now, let me explain something to you. This is all paperwork. It was like office work, except that there was a part of it that became very interesting. There was a lieutenant, a young kid, he was about 19, and he was in charge of putting the spots where the radars should be located in an invasion, so that they got low coverage, the low lobes of the radar antennas would cover the whole area. And he showed me how to do this, because he was soon transferred And I would do
This was your job now.
yeah, but I was not an officer,
All right.
so there was no way that I could go up the ladder because I was not an officer.
But you had this job that an officer.
But I had the job, I liked it.
Yeah.
And I would plan the location of the radars. And in an invasion, they come in with the 602 radars, the small ones, that stick up out of a tent. And they're only there temporarily for about a week. Then they're replaced by big ones on trucks. And I would go in on the second or third day of the invasion. I had a letter from General, what was his name? Eichenberger, allowing me to get transport on any military aircraft. Now we go in to the invasion area, like Hollandia, and I would go around and see that they located where they were supposed to be. Now this one radar was supposed to be up on the edge of a cliff, but they went way back under the trees in the shade.
So it didn't.
I said, no, you got to get up here to get the proper load pattern. And it was a very interesting experience. For a few days, I would get on any chow line I can to eat and sleep wherever I could, and then transport it back to the outfit.
Wow.
And this went on for 4 invasions. At one time when we were in Hollandia, things were very quiet. Hollandia is like halfway between one end of the New Guinea and the other, on the northern part. And there was a little island called Wakti, triangular. I'm telling you little stories.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
That's all right.
That's fine. Just keep on.
There was an airport there. In fact, the whole island was one long runway.
So small.
And 5 miles away was the mainland where the Japs were.
All right.
It was very interesting. So I volunteered to run a signal center there. In other words, communications. Because in forward areas you get better food, you get fresh food. Where in the back areas you eat out of K-ration cans. So I volunteered for that for a while, and I was up there in Wakti. It was very interesting. Every night we were bombed.
Really? Wow. So I mean, that
So I would roll out of my bed right into the hole, stay there until it was over.
sounds pretty scary, you know.
Now, well, the fact is that there are times when you just stay there and say, look, you just watch it and see what's going on.
Really? Did you become so used to it almost that it didn't have the same effect to you? Or?
The Japanese were very careful with their bombing. If they dropped 6 bombs, 5 of them would hit an airplane.
Really?
Airplanes.
That's how exact they were.
How exact they were.
Wow.
Well, when we were, for instance, I saw the movies of our bombing of Biak. That's another island. Biak. They dropped bombs all over the place. Most of them were in the water, but they were all over the place.
So it was not
Didn't
nearly.
matter where. That's bomb the hell out of it.
Let's just bomb it. Interesting.
So we did see a little action.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then the invasion of the Philippines was very interesting. We landed on the 2nd day, for which the Philippine government awarded me a medal with 2 silver stars on it.
For this invasion, that when you were there.
Because I was on the 2nd day of the invasion. But I got 4 Bronze Star medals for 4 campaigns. Anyway, we landed with an LST. The front opens up and the ramp goes down, and the trucks could drive out
Yep.
into the shallow water and on the beach and into the water, onto the beach. And I slept that night on the beach in the rain with Japanese sharpshooters up in the trees.
Really?
Oh,
Did you ever have an experience with a sharpshooter getting stuck in a tree ever?
yes, I did. That's another experience.
Well, what happened to that?
We moved inland in Leyte.
Mhm.
Leyte. We moved inland and we set up our whole headquarters. I didn't tell you why I went to headquarters.
Yeah.
When we first landed, when we first came into New Guinea, I was in the 5th platoon, and I knew that a platoon would go out and spend 6 months at a time in a secluded area with just those men alone. And I got to talking with them. One fellow, the sergeant, was there, a very nice guy from New England, and he brought up the subject of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And he complained that where there used to be a store where they all bought their stuff, and then a competing Jewish fella opened up down on the edge of town with lower prices. How do you like that? And he's spoiling it for this guy. I said, what do you mean spoiling it? He's doing you a favor. And we had a whole discussion about that. And the tents were lined up so that you can talk and it'd be heard all the way down the line. And I didn't realize it, but the whole gang of 50 guys were listening.
Really?
And they all piped in and gave their 2 cents worth. And I could see that my life was going to be miserable.
Oh, really?
Spending 6 months at a time with this group of guys. So I went to headquarters and had myself transferred into headquarters.
Really? So it was so bad just with the anti-Semitism?
No, but headquarters was very interesting. Because I had this wonderful job. And the invasion of the Philippines, I was going to tell you about that business with
The sharpshooter?
Sharpshooter.
everybody in the outfit, including officers, pulled duty as sentries on the perimeter of the outfit. We all did it, and until things quieted down and became safe. So we moved up ahead, and then I was on guard duty with this Mexican-American fellow who, he was scared. He laid on the bottom of the hole and stayed there the whole time.
Really?
Well, we had a telephones into the headquarters, and things were quiet. I couldn't figure out what was going on. And a guy crept up from the road towards me, and he says, "What's going on here? And what's happening?" I said, "I think there's somebody stuck on a tree up there." Came down in a parachute.
Really? This guy got stuck?
Got stuck on the tree. And it's dangerous. What are we going to do?
Yeah, the enemy.
Of course, a lot of them dropped down the airport, and they had bottles of gasoline or something or other, and they burned a whole bunch of airplanes. Did a lot of damage. But they were kamikazes, you know.
Yeah, where they would blow themselves up.
They wouldn't. Well, they would be shot. Period.
Yeah.
So this guy's stuck up in the tree, and he's got bottles hanging down, and he's got a rifle, and what are we gonna do? Because the fellow that crept up to me was in front of a convoy that wanted to come up and go to the front.
Yeah.
He says, "You're holding up the whole thing." I said, what can I do? He says, "We synchronized our watches." And he says, at this certain time, 10 minutes later, he's going to turn his headlights on. And he says, "Shoot the guy, get rid of him." Okay. The Mexican fellow just scared down the bottom of the...
Yeah.
And I'm waiting, and then 10 minutes later, he put on his headlights, and I think 100 guys beat me to it.
Really? Is that many other guys around? Jeez.
Because the headlights lit up the whole area, and bingo.
God.
And I don't want to tell you the dirty part of it, because the Puerto Ricans, not Puerto Ricans, Filipinos,
Yeah.
did to the bodies.
Really, they would do some bad stuff.
Anyway,
So,
but that was my scariest experience.
yeah, right there. Definitely. So that was your closest maybe experience, combat-wise,
Yeah.
besides the raids, getting the bomb raids and stuff.
But other than that, it was more or less a boring type of operation.
Yeah. So, yeah, so we've been talking a lot about stories and stuff, but I want to get into just how you were feeling during those times. Like, what was your feeling about being in this war, going to this war?
Well, I felt that the war was definitely worthwhile at the time. The whole world was involved,
Yeah.
and it'd be terrible if Hitler got ahead. And he already had taken France.
So it just seemed logical to go to war.
It seemed to be the right thing to do. And Eleanor Roosevelt was the president at the time, and we agreed with him.
Yeah.
And after him was Truman. I think it was Truman, yeah, who used the atomic bomb.
Yeah. Yes. And that was at the very end of the war.
Yeah, toward the end of the war. Yeah.
And
Well, we were already in the middle of the Philippines. I spent a little time on a little island to see a new radar, a new microwave radar. So I spent a month there examining it.
this new technology.
Yeah.
Is it?
See, I had a college degree,
Yeah.
and I went to the Army, and I never had any training in anything. But I had this big, terrific background of ham radio. And as a result, they sent me, they wanted me to learn this and that.
Fortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because didn't you have other siblings that was in the war too? Nobody else?
With me?
Yeah,
No.
yeah, no, I know not with you, but your brothers were in.
No, my brothers were not in the Army. My one friend, Becca, became a gunner in a bomber, and he was shot down somewhere in the Pacific. And that was the end of him.
So you were on this island up until the end of the war, where they dropped this atomic bomb, right?
I was in the main city of the Philippines. I was in the Philippines, and then they dropped the bomb, and we listened to the radio and read reports in the Army magazine. I forgot what they call it.
The newspaper or whatever.
Yeah.
And do you remember hearing this speech on the radio by Truman, by the president?
Yeah.
That speech, that famous.
talk about a radio. I lived in a tent all this time, a year and a half, from one tent to another. The other guys put the tents up. We lived in them.
Mm-hmm.
We got fresh water brought in tanks. If you wanted to wash yourself, you take your helmet, the metal part of the helmet,
Mm-hmm.
you hang it on the edge of the tent, and at night there's rain, and in the morning you got a helmet full of water, and you do, they call it a horse bath.
Really?
But you wash yourself with one cup, one
One
helmet
helmet full of water.
Yeah. Anyway, what else can I tell you?
So, well, we've been talking a lot about the war and everything. Do you want to talk a little bit about just some stuff about when you were younger, before the war?
All right, as I said, I had two groups of friends. I fooled around with ham radio a lot.
Yeah.
When it came time to go to college,
Mm-hmm.
I thought for sure I was going to go to become an engineer,
Really?
go into electronics. But my older brother, Paul, was the decider of everything. And they always referred to him, and he would say, well, do this or do that. So they sent me to business school.
Really? But you necessarily didn't really want to do that?
So I had my hobby on one side and school on the other.
Mm-hmm. Where were you born exactly?
I was born on Crown Street in Brooklyn,
Mm-hmm.
10 days after they moved in.
Your family moved in? Is that
Yeah,
when you
and I
were
was born right in that house.
So, and how long did you live there for?
Until I got married.
All the way up until you got married? Wow.
And that was, I would call it upper middle class
Mm-hmm.
level.
Yeah, of growing up and everything. And do you remember the whole stock market crash when you were younger? I guess
Yes,
you were
I do.
very young.
I was very young, but
Yeah.
I remember it.
Mm-hmm. And what do you remember about that?
I remember, well, my father was in business, and he had this wholesale dry goods business. And he was not affected too much by it.
Mm-hmm.
But my uncle Abe, was heavily invested in the stock market, and he lost everything.
Really?
And they were afraid he's going to commit suicide or
Oh
something.
God.
And I understand that my father helped him out and gave him quite a bit to put him back on his feet.
Very generous.
He's very good to me.
Mm-hmm. So, but you remember that it was tough times though? during
Yes,
the
it was
stock
tough
market?
times. But we were in good shape
Yeah.
financially, so
Mhm.
can't complain.
Yeah. Personally. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
What's this exactly?
I got a whole bunch of medals here.
Oh,
Medals.
that's cool.
All kinds, medals. How do you open these things up? This is one. I don't remember which one that is, but I have a jacket, what they call an Eisenhower jacket.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they stopped wearing the long jackets, and because of Eisenhower with his short jacket,
Mm-hmm.
they thought it should be nose. And I came home with one, and I have a whole bunch, all my ribbons. Each ribbon is for a particular campaign or something. I don't remember exactly what it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But in any event, got a whole bunch of medals. He's big deal. Here's another one.
Was this maybe just for being in World War II, you think, or?
I don't remember what it was.
Or it could be for a campaign, or?
But the little bronze stars on each that you wear on your campaign, each one of those stands for a campaign, you know, an invasion or something.
Yeah. And how many did you have of those?
Four Bronze Star medals and 2 little silver stars.
Was there another medal too? Or?
Yeah, there's a third one here. I got more.
How many medals do you have, you think?
I don't know. There's another one. See, the ribbon tells a story about it.
Yeah.
I'll be done.
Yeah, the markings and the bands on it, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, that one.
See, and these are the little things you wear.
When did you actually end up getting these medals?
I went to the down here on 4th Street. What do they call it?
It's a veterans office for
Huh?
the recruits.
So this was a...
There was a representative there from the Army. And if you bring a copy of your discharge papers, which lists on the back all your medals and everything, they mail it in, and eventually you get your medals.
So it wasn't until years after that you actually got them?
Oh yeah, way after.
Way after.
And if I didn't ask for them, I would never get them.
Really? So you'd think they would send them right to you, you know?
Yeah. No. Anyway,
so just before, I just want to talk a little more about before you went to war and stuff. Just growing up,
right.
I guess, because I just...
I would love to tell a story about my father.
Well, you can tell it if you want, that's fine.
All right. He came from a small town of about 100 residents, about 50 miles south of Warsaw. The town had about 100 residents. Half of them were Rothkopf, and half of them were Zeitman.
In this whole town?
In the whole town. And they were intermarried, some of them, you know. And so I have no idea where the name Rothkopf comes from.
Yeah, other than that one.
Yeah. And when he was the oldest in the family, oldest son. But his father, Solomon.
This was in Russia?
In Russia.
Yeah. In Poland?
In Poland, actually.
All right.
Took him, or about in 1870, something like that. Took him and they went to a wine factory south of Warsaw, and got him a job at the age of 8.
The age of 8, wow. Working at this wine factory.
Working at the wine factory. The family was dealt in horses. They were horse dealers. I don't know what that is. But in any event, he got him a job there, so that on weekends, he would came home, he would spend his entire salary on food, which he brought home with him to his family, his mother and kids. And his father went to New York to start a business, which he did on Rivington Street in New York.
And what year was this? What did you say?
This is about 1870, 1875.
Wow.
Yeah.
Back when New York was some country.
And then when he got enough money saved up in New York, he had the rest of the family brought over.
Mm-hmm. That's when your dad actually first came over to him.
Yeah. And my father was a young kid at the time. He remembers the famous blizzard of 1888. It was only about 20 inches of snow, but with the wind blew it up, covering the second story windows.
Really? Jeez.
It was quite New York was dead. They couldn't move.
It was just stuck in this blizzard, 1888.
But he remembers that. Anyway, what else can I tell you? He started this business in a men's socks.
Mm-hmm.
In a store down, you walk down steps to get into the store. And they used to put stuff out every morning on wooden planks to display the merchandise. And my father would be there 5 o'clock in the morning setting the thing up. He's the oldest child of the family. So he did all the work and he took care of the family.
Wow.
And on weekends, he had a friend who had a push cart and a loud voice, and they used to go up and sell men's socks in Irish Town, which was 14th Street. And go up and sell 2 loads of push cart completely out on a Saturday night.
And sell it all out. It's funny.
And there's other stories I can tell you too. But eventually, he moved into a Mandel's Bank went broke on Rivington Street. Mandel's Bank, a big bank,
Mm-hmm.
and it went kaput. And he bought the building. And he spent a couple of years chopping out the vault in the basement,
All right.
so it could have a regular basement down there.
And so in this, and then he eventually moved to Brooklyn.
Yeah,
Is this,
in 1920,
mm-hmm. And that's when you were born, right there.
and that's where I was born.
Mm-hmm.
I'm much younger than my brothers and sisters.
How old is your brother and your sister?
I have 2 brothers that are gone.
His older brother is
My sister
14
is,
years
how
old.
old is she?
His sister is 8 years older than him. She's 93.
96,
93.
93.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul was 14 years older than him. And another brother who
But I was the
about
youngest by
12
far.
years old.
Mm-hmm. By far, yeah. So the older brother was kind of, he took care of you a lot because he was so much older.
Oh, yeah.
So, what do you think the happiest memory in your childhood would be? If you could think of,
It was never happy.
if you could think about
I don't know.
a certain experience when you were younger, a little kid or something.
I don't remember any particular
Yeah.
things.
It's a hard question. But
I was a very lucky guy.
yeah. What do you think influences what in your life? What were some major influences in your life?
For this electronics and ham radio was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I had some ideas of inventions, experiments. We used to talk on that ham radio to people all over.
All over the world?
Yeah,
And you would make friends with people?
you could make friends with them. Most of them were fairly local, you know.
Yeah.
But and exchange cards with them.
Mm-hmm.
What they call QSL cards. You can hang them up on the wall.
See all the people that you talk to
Yeah,
and stuff.
it was a terrific experience.
So that was very influencing a lot and everything. And I guess even with the war, it helped
Yes, it did
a
help.
lot with
It
everything.
helped a lot. In fact, there was a time when we were living in a tent, and a fella came up to me from another outfit, and he says, listen, he says, I can get a hold of a kit to put together a radio that somebody had assembled a whole bunch of stuff, radio parts, and they made them into kits. He says, and I can get this kit, but you put it together for me?
Mm-hmm.
I said, yeah, if you let me hold it, keep it for a while. I did. I put it together, and we had a radio. It was wonderful. We used to listen to Tokyo Rose.
Really? What's that exactly?
Tokyo Rose used to play all the latest records.
Mm-hmm.
It was wonderful.
And what was some of the music?
Huh.
What do you remember any of the music exactly?
No.
That was like.
No.
Asking about
But what this guy Tokyo
Rose.
Yeah, what was this?
She could speak English very well, and I think
Mm-hmm.
she was pro-American, but she was broadcasting from Japan.
All right. It's interesting.
So it was a pleasure to listen to music.
Mm-hmm.
Artie Shaw.
This is before they had the Armed Forces radio system set up.
Yeah.
Benny Goodman, was that era?
Yeah, Benny Goodman, music like that.
Artie Shaw, Swing,
Swing, it was all like the swing
Big
music,
Band.
big bands and stuff. That's funny.
I'm sorry, I have this mess on my face right now.
Oh, it does not matter. It's not a big deal. And then I guess we can talk about after the war, coming back from after.
Coming
the war.
back,
Mhm.
I'll tell you what happened. I was in an accident, and my left leg
Mhm.
got out of joint. I could only keep it this way, I couldn't straighten it out. So I went to hopped to where the guys were going to go to medics,
Yeah, the medics.
and they did take us over there in a car, and they checked me into the hospital right away. They put me to sleep. I don't remember anything, but I woke up with a big cast on my foot. They straightened it out.
Really? Wow. So you had this cast on for a while.
Yeah, so I had this big cast on, and I was hopping around with that thing, and when they took it off, I had to do exercises, so I would limp.
Mm-hmm.
And just about that time, the war was over,
Alright.
and we were going home. The outfit was getting ready, and I was still in the hospital.
So you wanted to get out of there? but
Yeah, I
you're in
wanted
this
to get back in
hospital.
the outfit. So suddenly, they're loading up all of the guys from the hospital onto a hospital ship. This was in Manila. Big white Canadian hospital ship. And I could see at the top of the gangplank, the ones who were limping to this side, the ones who were not limping down. So I limped.
you made sure you were limping.
So I was on the upper deck.
Mhm. And that's how you. And this is the boat that took you back.
And I got a nice drive back to Seattle.
Seattle, really?
And then we took a hospital train across country to Cape Cod. I was there for a few days, for a few weeks.
For a few weeks.
And then I got discharged.
Shortly after, and then you went back to New York, right?
Yes.
And then is that where you met your wife?
Oh well, I had a friend, Marty, who was a good friend. He we used to fool around with ham radio together, and all that. He had a cousin, Phyllis.
All right.
And when he got married, I went to his wedding, and I met Phyllis.
That was where you met her. So how long after was this when you got discharged? Did you meet her? Would you say?
A number of years.
Like 2 years.
2 years.
2 years, something like that. So and then where'd you guys move into? Where'd you live at?
We lived on Montgomery Street in an apartment on the 5th floor. I remember that apartment.
Well, first we lived with your parents. We lived in his mother's house.
At your house, your mother's house for a while.
It was an apartment house,
Mm-hmm.
and we knew the owners. And it was an empty apartment, and we moved in there. We lived, for the first few weeks we lived at home in my house.
So, are there any things that you'd want to add or anything, or?
What can I add?
I mean, I could keep on asking, a question or two, but.
There's no. I'll say this, which is important, because I know a fella who lived across the street from me. A young man who was brought up not to know any bad things, and he always had the finest of everything. He was drafted in the Army, and he had a nervous breakdown when he found out there were all kinds of people in this world.
Yeah,
And he had a nervous breakdown.
And he couldn't be in the Army anymore?
I don't know what they did with him. I have no idea.
Got out of the Army.
Sandy.
He came out of the Army.
I don't know whatever happened with him. But my thoughts were this. It's a good thing for everybody to put in maybe a half a year in the Army, or whatever, the Navy or whatever, so that they get a general idea. I mean, you go to school, you don't learn everything.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things to learn.
Of course.
And meeting people. Like I knew a guy in my outfit who was a Mexican American who firmly believed that you're not a man until you rape a woman.
Really?
And you like that.
Jesus. That's crazy.
See, there's all kinds of people in this world.
Yeah.
And by meeting all kinds, you round out your whole idea about people. And I think it's a good idea for everybody to go get the Army for 6 months.
And just to meet all these different people. Because you met so many different kinds of people.
Oh, God.
Hundreds, right? So many different kinds of people in the Army. And stuff like that. And just about your generation, I just wanted to say that it was the term "the greatest generation" was used by Tom Burkhardt, was saying, you know, in his book and stuff. And I just wanted to know what you thought of that, to be labeled as the greatest generation. What do you think?
I wouldn't call it the greatest generation. I would just call it just a generation that experienced something unusual.
Yeah, definitely unusual and different than
Yeah.
a lot of other generations.
Now, there's an awful lot of there's wars going on all over the world.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
And we have a friend whose granddaughter was born in Israel. She's about 6.
Julie's age, exactly.
She was visiting for a while here. She has an American citizenship and an Israeli citizenship. She opted to go back to Israel to go in the army
Really?
She's doing
with her friends.
Huh.
And I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
For her, it's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, I mean, I guess it just seems, you know, someone like me, you know, from a different generation looking at your generation, it just seems that it's just so, you guys really just have this understanding of maybe humanity and life that maybe other generations is a different sort of an understanding, it seems.
That's true.
Because you guys experienced a lot of major hardships.
And I'll tell you this. True, I always wanted to be an engineer, but I became a businessman in the wholesale dry goods business. And I've had a lot of people who, well, how can you put it? They came to this country for the freedom and an opportunity to get ahead and do something.
Mm-hmm.
And they did, many of them. I could tell you quite a few stories, and I think that's a marvelous thing,
Mm-hmm.
having seen it.
Definitely, you saw that this immigration
Yes,
happen.
that they come here
Mm-hmm.
because they want the opportunity to do something for themselves and improve themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you stories, but aside from that,
Mm-hmm.
it's a wonderful country.
Mm-hmm. That's how you would still feel about
That's
it,
right.
of course, and everything.
Right.
After going through all this war and everything like
Right.
that.
It's a wonderful country,
Mm-hmm.
and you can do anything you want.
Definitely. Alright, well, this was very nice. Thank you for your
Okay.
time and everything for this interview. I really appreciate it. And
It's still
everything.
running.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only a few minutes left, actually.
Alright, so good. It's perfect time. So.
Okay.
Just wanted to thank you.
Okay.
Alright, you can stop.
Alright.